Welcome to the Filmmaker's Playbook. My name is Jason Branagan and this is a podcast all about filmmaking. On today's show, I talk to First Assistant Director Sarah Lucas. Sarah's credits include A Gentleman in Moscow, Boiling Point, Malpractice, Midsomer Murders, Father Brown, Doctors, and many, many more. In our conversation, we discuss how Sarah got started in the industry, how she climbed the AD ladder, how a first AD gets hired, collaborating with her directors and other HODs to build schedules, the importance of treating the entire cast and crew with kindness, and being a female AD in a male-dominated industry. I hope you enjoy today's conversation. Thank you for listening. Sarah Lucas, thank you very much for joining me. I'm really looking forward to talking to you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
Excellent. So I guess to begin, I'm always interested in how people define their own jobs. And I was wondering if, in your own words, you might tell me what an AD does and how you describe or think of your job as a first AD.
Yeah, so I mean, for me, a first AD kind of like we run the floor, kind of we work directly with the director to ensure that kind of they get what they want in terms of what comes on screen, so working with the rest of the team, to kind of stick to the time restraints that we're under. Obviously, inevitably, there's so many scenes to shoot in a day, and we all kind of have to work together to kind of make sure that that works smoothly and kind of to get those things shot, so it could be anything. I kind of, during prep, I'll kind of do some scheduling. I do the scheduling of the show and kind of I'll get given a script. I'll break it all down. I'll pop it into a schedule and then, we'll kind of spend the next however many weeks shooting it, which is the exciting part, isn't it, really?
Absolutely. So how did you come to ADing and how did you become a first AD?
I actually started in locations back in the day. I'd kind of got given an opportunity to be a locations assistant on a job. And through that, I ended up kind of, seeing how the ADs worked. And I kind of made it my choice to kind of be on the floor all the time. When I wasn't kind of doing location stuff, I made it my thing to kind of just go and hang out with the runners and the thirds. And I soon kind of realized that was where I wanted to be. I'd done some other little jobs as a floor runner or a production runner. And I remember seeing the first on set and being like, that's what I want to do, and so from then, I remember saying to the line producer at the time, when my locations contract was coming up, I was like, do you know what? Like, I'd really like to have a stab at thirding. Like, I've been on the floor a lot, like as a locations assistant and as a runner, and I'd like to kind of step up. And I was really lucky that they turned around and said, yeah, we'll give you a shout. Like, they were just kind of going into what's known as triple banking. They had three units filming at any one time, so they needed an extra kind of team. So I kind of hopped in as that third, and then just kind of climbed the AD ladder, really, which was good. I did some years as a third, and then hopped up to second, until I started firsting back in 2014. So I'm just hitting my 10-year mark, which kind of crept up on me. Like, I didn't realize it. It's kind of happened really quickly, but that's kind of, I did that kind of thing. I did the ladder,
So what was it then about ADing that drew you to it? So when you were working in locations, what was it that made you go, yes, that is the thing actually I want to do?
Do you know what? It's kind of like the floor is your stage and you are the leader of that stage. And I suppose the inner show off in me, kind of just wanted to have a bit of a bite of that, and, I really enjoy kind of that feeling of making sure everyone knows what they're doing. Like, people look at me to kind of go, what are we doing next? And I kind of watched that kind of the dance of the first AD as they moved with the DOP, with the director, with all the other departments. And I just thought, yeah, that's something I think I'd be good at. So yeah, and I just kind of was like, that's what I want to do, and I don't really have any. It's not that I don't have the aspirations of directing, or I just don't. I kind of, you see that you get career thirds, career seconds, and for me, like, people often now say, oh, what's the next step? But I just love firsting so much. It's definitely cut me open, and that's what you get. I am a first. So yeah, I'm pleased that I've done it and I'm doing it, and it's an exciting job. No 2 days are the same.
Yes, and a good first is ultimately so vital to any set and any show or any film in actually getting the thing in the can.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I was coming up through the ranks, I obviously worked with loads of different firsts, and what I found was that I was picking parts of the ones that I really loved working with, and kind of slowly kind of piecing together this jigsaw of the first I wanted to become, and equally, if there were certain things that first did that didn't sit right with me, I was like, well, I'm going to leave that there. I'm going to park that, and that's not something I'm going to become. And slowly but surely, as I kept on thirding and working with the firsts and kept seconding and doing all that, I kind of, and also knowing my own self and knowing how I am as a person, I kind of feel like I created the first that I wanted to be. And, it seems to be successful so far.
Love it. If we were to bounce back a little bit further, kind of to before you even moved into locations, was film something you always wanted to do, or film and telly, or was it just something that kind of happened and when you were in it, you realized you loved it?
Do you know what? I wanted to be a kids' TV presenter when I was growing up. I really wanted to be a kids' TV presenter, and I went to a very red brick school, and they were kind of very down for kind of like lessons that were not creative, let's say, and I really struggled with that. I always felt like I was being kind of trapped inside this box. It was of the time where they didn't do even things like drama, or we didn't do that. It was like Latin, it was French, it was German, it was the sciences, and I never kind of felt like I fit in with that. I was always kind of wanting to be creative, and I always felt like I wanted to kind of get outside the box of, you have to go and do this kind of red brick university, red brick job kind of thing. And I wanted to be a kids' TV presenter. Everyone kind of laughed at me. And then I said, you know what? Some sort of media degree is where I want to go. And I remember my French teacher at the time just pulling me out in front of the class and really laughing at the fact that I wanted to do something like that, which, that wasn't that long ago. That was, 25 years ago. And still that kind of opinion was out there that going off to do something in the media was kind of ridiculous, So I ended up going to Nottingham Trent Uni. I did broadcast journalism for 3 years, which was amazing. But again, doing that kind of made me go, do you know what? I'm not sure news is where I belong. Like, I am quite, I'm not kind of, I'm not in the news sector for sure. And and then I went off, and I kind of fell into the likes of X Factor, Britain's Got Talent. I was running on things like that. And then a job came up on a sketch show in London called Little Miss Jocelyn. And I jumped onto that. I was a production runner. I had no idea what anything meant. They were asking me to pull sides out of the script, and I was like, are they talking onion rings? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, what do you mean? Ask people if they want sides. I don't understand. Like, and but like, and it was interesting, like on that job, it was, there was a hidden camera a shoot in there. There was a studio shoot in there. There was a scripted location shoot in there. So it kind of gave me the ability to look at every different part of, that particular show. And I was like, okay, this is where I'm going to find my feet, you know. And from there, I kind of, I got a job, as I say, as a locations assistant on the daytime soap Doctors. And yeah, I kind of, that was my first little kind of dalliance with drama. And I was like, I like this. This is where I like this, you know. So, and then as I say, I kind of, the rest is history. I kind of just worked up and up and up and, you know, and did it that way. So the soaps are a great place to learn for, you know, people coming in, you know, and I will forever be grateful for the likes of Doctors. I mean, it's an absolute travesty that they've shut it down, to be honest. You know, it did become a very good place for people to learn. And, you know, and I think, you know, I've met people further on down jobs who started on Doctors. And I do think that those sort of places create this magnificent work ethos of, wow, we've got a lot to do. And, you know, not a lot of time and not a lot of budget to do it, you know. So, and everyone mucks in. And it's magnificent, really, what they managed to pull off with the money and resources that they have. So the fact that they've got rid of that, I think, is a massive loss for the TV kind of world as a whole, really, you know, and it does kind of worry me, like, where, you know, the future of other shows like that, because they are brilliant shows to work on.
Yes, it's a huge loss, and, you know, compounded by the loss of Holby previously and stuff as well. It's a massive number of episodes of drama that aren't being made. And as you said, I think so many people had the opportunities to train on those shows. On Doctors, you worked, and correct me if I'm wrong, but as a third, as a second, and as a first. So
Yeah.
would I be right in guessing that when you talk about kind of climbing that AD ladder, Doctors was one of the places that gave you the opportunity to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. And what I like to do, and what I kind of say to, you know, I've done a few talks at universities and whatnot, and, you know, to people kind of just coming into the industry, what I say to them is, when you find yourself on a place like I did on Doctors, you know, you find a lot of the soaps kind of open up that training ground for people. And I think the best advice I can give is for people to do a stint there, jump off, go on to other things, come back with what you've learned, then go away again, you know. And for me, that's kind of what I did. I did some thirding there, and then I went off. I did Line of Duty, the first series, and you know, then came back, and so I'd kind of go in third on bigger stuff, and then maybe come back and use something like Doctors as a second AD training ground. And, you know, and I was very, very grateful for the opportunity that show gave me. And when it came to firsting, they very much gave me a block. And, you know, they had spin-off shows, all part of BBC Birmingham. Like they did the Father Browns, the WPC 56, you know, and I was very lucky that I'd go off and maybe, you know, third something else, and then maybe I'd come back and second on one of their spin-off shows. So they really looked after me at BBC Birmingham, and you know, I couldn't be more grateful for the opportunities that they gave me, really, and the people that you meet there, you know. Yeah, I do think I was very lucky that the ladder I climbed was in a very safe space. And, you know, people gave me opportunities that you know, I still refer to now. Like, I still think about, and I do think, gosh, you know, like, I was very lucky to be given those and to fly with them. And as I say, the best thing for me to do was to go off, do other shows, realize how different it is. Because, you know, every single show, essentially, it's the same machine. It just kind of, you know, same product, you know, same machine. It's just everyone works very differently. And it's just such an eye-opener to make sure that as an AD, you go and experience all of those different things, you know.
I think that's a brilliant way of approaching climbing that ladder. Did you have a mentor who was able to maybe advise you that this would be a good way to build your career? Or was that something you kind of realized yourself that, you know, I could get stuck maybe in one show and it's really important for me to actually just get out?
I think that, you know, I kind of picked up on that very quickly. Like, I could just see that, it would have been very easy for me to stay in one place. Um, and I appreciate that it works for a lot of people. It's kind of the nearest thing to an office job, really. It is the soaps, because it's surrounded by wonderful people. It's a well-oiled machine that knows how it works, and and I can see why it's an attractive position to be in. But I also kind of, I never really had roots anywhere, so I could always go where the work went. At the time, I didn't have, family roots or anything like that. And so I could kind of, when an opportunity came, I could just kind of go. I was a little bit like the littlest hobo, just kind of going wherever the work was, And, I'd find myself in a year being in Birmingham, in Leeds, in Devon, in London. And, and that life has a shelf life, that kind of traveling life, it can be very difficult. And I think now that I have, nailed where I want to be in my career, for the moment at least, I do feel like I can, I'm at a lovely position where I can kind of pick and choose where I want to go. And, and ideally, like geographically, I kind of like to stay where I am so that I can still have that sense of outside life other than work. Whereas I think when you are first starting out, you're in that kind of like that zone and that world where the people you work with become your family, and whether you're working with them for 12, 13, 14 hours a day, you then go, well, should we go for dinner? Should we go for a drink? And they become your family. So I think it's quite easy to do that. But for me, it was very important to kind of always remember to just go and experience other things. And I have to say that was, for me personally, the best thing I could have done. And it is scary, the idea that, sticking in one place, and then, nobody thought that doctors would get the chop in that respect. Nobody would think it, because, for a daytime show, I think, they were pulling in great figures still. And, they didn't actually, there was nothing wrong with that show. They did everything right, and they provided everything right. So the fact that, it breaks my heart that so many people who I consider family now are looking down the barrel of, wow, we've been here for 23, 24 years, and we don't know what that outside world looks like,
Yeah, it's very tough. And I think have even seen it with Hollyoaks dropping to 3 eps as well, which impacts a lot of staff who have been there for a really long time. And seems like we're just in a place in the industry where those safe jobs are no longer safe.
100%, yeah. And it's very rare you find a staff job within our industry, and that freelance life can be really difficult to kind of navigate. As I say, like, it's been quiet for the last kind of 3 months for me. And it really is feast or famine, and it is a lot of juggling. And the idea that somebody could be there standing with a staff job in front of you is really appealing. I can totally see why people do it. And, there was a world where, this is quite a few years ago now, there was a staff job going at Emmerdale. And at the time I was like, this could really work for me. Like, but again, you kind of, you just feel that, oh gosh, I think if I was kind of in that staff position, would I then crave the outside world? And I think I would. I think it would really, I don't think that staff kind of life is for me, really. But I can 100% see why people do it. But it's scary. It's scary, the thought that, that would go,
Yeah, I think the idea of navigating that freelance world and the way you approached it in terms of climbing the ladder is actually, I just want to emphasize that point, because I think it's a really great piece of advice, and not just for anyone who wants to first, but anyone in any department. So thank you for sharing that.
No, you're welcome. Yeah, it is. And that's kind of one of the first things I say to people, as I say, who are coming up, is just, absolutely keep your foot in, in that hole, but just kind of, dip the toe elsewhere as well. And, and also you come back to jobs as well that you've kind of, the ones where you've cut your teeth, you know, you come back and you've got kind of a, you know, a breath of fresh air for people, and, you know, more insights into maybe how another show does things. And you can go, well, do you know what? This actually works really well. Like, you know, so it's all about learning. You know, I still go onto every set with the mindset that I'm a runner. I still do it now, you know, and I'm, you know, I'm totally blessed to be doing some amazing shows now. And not now, I've always done amazing shows. It's just kind of a different, you know, it's a different level, isn't it? You know, and I still go in wanting to prove myself. And I think we are now of an age where I think people forget that. You know, I see runners come up and I see, you know, I don't want to say an entitlement, but there is that kind of, you know, oh, well, you know, well, it's very lax. It feels very lax. And I do remember when I was starting off, you know, if a first kind of contacted me about a job, I would bite their hand off. I would be like, absolutely, where do you need me? You know, turn up an hour early. Like, I'm here, I'm ready to go, you know, and things have changed now. Things have changed very much. And it's hard to watch because I still consider myself a young pup of the industry, you know. But like, yeah, that kind of like that vibe has definitely changed. I've seen it, you know.
Yes.
And that's why for me, like, I'm very, very fortunate that the AD team that I tend to take with me are so magnificent. They all have, I see versions of myself within all of them for different ways. And all of them are, you know, they're keen to learn. They want to be there. You know, and with that, I have created a lovely shorthand with them, and we all work really well together. And I, you know, even to these people though, you know, I kind of say, you know, going forward onto your next job when I'm not with you, like, take this attitude with you, take this kind of this passion, and, you know, you know, and it's not even about respecting your elders, but it's about earning your stripes, I think. And, you know, I put a lot of time in, and even now, like, I know my audience. So I know who I can kind of, you know, play with and stuff, but I also kind of know when to step it back. And I think there is there's a definite new wave of people who don't have that filter. And I say to people, I'm like, just remember, you know, that a lot of people have worked for a lot of years to kind of get to where they are. And I will treat a runner, I will treat a production runner exactly the same as I will treat an exec producer. There is absolutely no difference for me, because we're all there to do a job, and we're all there for many, many hours. And it's really important that my team do the same, you know, that they treat everyone with the same amount of respect, you know. And I'm a big advocate for, you know, you do see it, and I've seen it coming up through the ranks again. Like, you do, you know, so much time gets given to, you know, the technical department. And of course, you know, it needs to be lit perfectly. It needs to be, you know, cameras need to be set up perfectly, that, you know, everything like that. And I totally understand that. But for me, that same amount of respect and time needs to go into the costume and makeup departments, you know, when they come in for checks. You know, I'm a big believer of everybody gets their time on my floor, you know. And I have it on jobs where, you know, sometimes the makeup department, costume department will come up and be like, you are a breath of fresh air in that respect, because we do get shouted at for kind of coming on and doing our thing. But everyone, for me, has the same level of importance on that floor. And it's important that my team, who I take with me, again, respects that kind of, that idea that everyone, you know, everyone is as important as the next person, you know, because we couldn't do it without, you know, we couldn't have the actors on set looking the way they do without costume and makeup. So however lovely your lights may look and your camera positions may look, if these actors haven't been through the chair at, you know, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, then there's no point for. So it's a very chicken and egg kind of situation. And so for me, it is all about respect for that, you know. And I won't see anyone kind of be shortchanged in terms of the amount of time they need as a department on set.
A couple of things I would love to just reiterate is I love the idea everyone is equal, whether it's a production runner or any kind of trainee through to an exec. Everyone, the machine only works if everyone is on the same page and working together.
100%, you know, because also, you know, you have to kind of, we've all been there. We've all been at that production runner level. We all know how daunting it is when you're stepping onto a crew of, you know, 50, 60, 70 people all looking at you, and you don't, you know, as I say, I didn't have a clue what was going on, you know, when I first started. And I think even down to the jargon we use on the radio, you know, I'm very aware that people might not understand when I'm saying, you know, I've just stepped off to go 10-1. Like, you know, if that had been me on my day one, I'd be like, well, where bloody hell's 10-1? Like, you know, I wouldn't know. So I just think it's really important to kind of just remember that. Remember where you've come from. And, you know, and does it happen all the way through for every person I meet? No, I don't think everyone does have that kind of respect level. But I am a big, I hope to be like a pioneer in making that. And, you know, from, as I say, every person that comes into my team, if ever I sniff out, you know, that somebody's not being treated right, then I just, yeah, it's just not happening. Same with, like, say, for example, when we have, you know, supporting artists on set, you know, the background artists come on and they've got just as long a days as we have, you know, so the minute I hear someone talking out of turn to them, no, it just doesn't wash with me, you know. So yeah, and I'm very, very fortunate that a lot of the directors I work with, you know, Phil Barantini is a massive example of this. You know, he's so respectful to everybody that comes through on essentially what is his set, you know, and he will treat everyone the same. And he has created this wonderful family kind of that he works with. And so therefore everybody has a really lovely time. And, you know, and that respect starts from above. And so, you know, Phil's respectful, I'm respectful, we trickle it down to our own departments. And also then if you do get anybody who comes in and is a bit cocksure of themselves, they soon see, oh, this isn't the set for that. You know, I'm gonna be there, and I'm gonna kind of follow their lead. So it is really important, you know.
Yes. Another AD I spoke to, Jared Duffy, put it in similar terms, but from the opposite perspective. And it was that shit runs downhill. So if things aren't working up top, everyone is going to feel it. So vice versa, if everyone is respectful and treating people kindly from the top down, that's what's going to happen on set.
Absolutely. And, you know, and all we can do as people going forward in the industry is fly that flag for everyone else to see. And for me, that is, you know, people can be amazing at their job, of course. But for me, it's about how you treat other people on the floor. You know, a lot of people have to travel for work. They're away from their families. You know, let's all be kind to each other. You know, and yes, it's a really stressful situation. It can, you know, I look at my watch when it's like 10 to wrap and we've still got a scene to do, and I can see my heart rate going up. But you just have to you have to be that calm presence on set, because you'll get it done and you'll all have a lovely time, you know.
Yeah. I also just want to reiterate something that you said that resonates with me a lot, was the idea that it's all about learning and kind of going to set every day like it's day one. And that idea of beginner's mindset almost, I think, is really important, because we're faced with so many problems, in a sense, or challenges to overcome. Things can go wrong. How do we deal with them? And I think the only way, or the best way, to be able to tackle things as they arise is by looking at them without prejudice or judgment or thinking, oh, I know how to fix this, and actually being able to see it for what it is so that you can react and solve creatively with the resources you have around you and the people you have around you.
100%. And, you know, I hold my hands up. Like if I've, you know, made some error, or anything like that. And again, I pass this on to my team. It's like, just tell me, like, it's absolutely fine, and I'm never going to throw you under the bus ever. Like, and I think having that kind of, being humble, I think is really important. Like, I would never ever want to walk onto a set and kind of, be this bolshy person that's like, well, I'm not going to pack that tea table away because that is so far, underneath my, remit. That's ridiculous, because 9 times out of 10, the runners are chasing after artists. They're putting other artists in the chair. They're, queuing something. And I'm not saying that, I would take myself from my first in position to go and pack down a tea table. But at the end of the day, if everyone's kind of running around, and it's going to mean that my team don't have to stay another 20 minutes after their already long day, then of course I'm going to help where I can, and I think it is really important. And, and sadly, you do still have people who are like, well, it's not my job anymore. And it's like, yeah, but you know how hard that was when it was your job. So come on, and I think it is important. I think it is important to remember your roots. It's important to know where you've come from, to be able to see where you're going and where you've landed, So I do, again, yeah. And it's a funny one, because sometimes I kind of go in and I, like, I'll introduce myself to people again, like, and it's weird because you're like, you're the first AD, like, so, and I don't get me wrong, I always kind of remember that, but there is that part where I'm like, right, okay, yeah, must wear something smart and, go on in and just kind of really, yeah, like, prove myself every time. But I do think that is something that is a quality that has kind of got me to where I am, because, yeah, there's no kind of room for, I think we all think that we're blagging. We all think that we're blagging it in this industry. We all have such imposter syndrome. We all think we're going to get caught out at some point. And, I'm very confident in how I am as a first, but it's taken time to get there, and I'm not very good at taking, like, the compliments and stuff. But then you go, do you know what? I've been doing this for 10 years now, and, I have repeat work and it's great. And suddenly you go, yeah, I know my shit. I know what I'm doing, but it is always good to kind of just remember where you came from. I think it makes you a better person, and it allows you to be open to learn more. And, I will always learn more from other firsts, from other directors, how people do things. And it's just important.
Yeah. You mentioned working with Bill, and what I would love to maybe look at is what the kind of hiring process has been like for you as a first, and maybe in the past versus now, in terms of when you were going out looking for that work. Were you approaching directors and trying to get them to bet on you, or were you going through production? I'm going to guess that at this career point you're at now, you're probably working with a lot of the same directors and they're bringing you onto jobs, but correct me if I am wrong.
Yeah, no, when I first started, it was definitely a case of, sending my CV out to line producers, to second ADs, but then, when you kind of hop into firsting, yeah, like, directors do tend to have their first that they work with. And, and you kind of create a good connection with those people. And then the next job they go on to, it's great to then continue that work process and going with them onto their next job. I was very lucky that, line producers have always kind of put me forward for jobs. Like, if the directors come on and maybe they're first busy, or whatever, they don't have a particular first they work with, I have had people kind of put me up and go, oh, give Sarah a shout and stuff. I worked with a guy, Al Mackay, on a job in Nottingham, called Without Sin. And I was very local. I lived in Nottingham, so I was local, and there wasn't a huge amount of filming crew around there. So when I knew it was going and there was an opportunity to work from home, I was like, oh my gosh, like, I need to get on this job. So I kind of hounded the line producer and I said, listen, I'll come onto this job as anything you need me to, like, I'm very appreciative that the director may have his own first. So I knew I think I knew at the time that Al was doing it. And then I got offered another job, which wasn't local, but I messaged them and I said, listen, like, you know, I've got another job being offered here. And they were like, right, well, yeah, we'll book you. We're booking you. We're booking you. And that was a massive risk because I didn't know Al. He didn't know me. And thankfully, it ended up being one of the best jobs I've done. And me and Al, you know, I'd love to work with Al again. And he has asked for me, you know, a couple of times, but dates haven't worked out. But, you know, that is a scary one when you jump onto a job before a director. And it very rarely happens, you know. But yes, that was a scary one. And then randomly, there was the job Malpractice that Phil was doing, and it was originally going to be in Birmingham, I think, and then it got pushed, and then it had to move cities because I think of the Commonwealth Games. So it moved up to Leeds, and I think they'd already got quite a lot of the crew, but yeah, I kind of put my name in for firsting and had a chat with Phil and Sophie, the producer, and just got on really, really well with him. I remember kind of sitting on that Zoom and being like, this is a guy I really want to work with. I'd done my research on him, and obviously he'd done Boiling Point, the film, and the shorts. And I thought, yeah, this guy's great, you know. And so we ended up having a great time on the interview and to the chat, and obviously ended up getting the job. And then started working with Phil, and within weeks, we were like, right, this, you know, he was like, this is, yeah, you're with me now. So, so there you go. And I have been just so fortunate. Like you know, I have to say, like, the idea of that invisible thread that we're all connected in certain ways and stuff, you know, it's massive. That sliding door moment, like, had I not kind of had that chat with Phil, then I wouldn't necessarily be where I am today, career-wise. So we did Malpractice. And then we did Boiling Point, the TV series, and we're going on to another one now, a Netflix job, Adolescence. We're going on to that, which I'll start in a few weeks. And yeah, he is one of the most, if not the most wonderful director to work for. And we have such, you know, it's a family. It's more than, you know, a work thing. It's a family, you know, and he just knows how to kind of work his team in the best possible way. He gets the best people working for him because of the way he is. He's just a wonderful man. And so I count myself very lucky to have kind of fallen in, you know, in Phil's net, really. And I, you know, long may it continue, because it is hard. It is hard when you are a jobbing, you know, if you're a jobbing first and, you know, you're out of work and stuff, because people do have their team that they want to work with. So I've been very lucky that when I do go onto a job with a director I don't know, we tend to hit it off. We tend to hit it off well, and you know, and then kind of my net is kind of then, you know, is bigger. It's, you know, so, but yeah, it can be hard. It can be hard, yeah. And I, you know, I try and take my team with me as well, and you know, and but I think when you're first starting out, it can be quite daunting because you know, you kind of don't know where to turn. And, you know, there are so many runners and ADs out there. Like, how do you kind of find a first and kind of, you know, click with them and, you know, and carry on that throughout? Like, it is difficult. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to come back because I really want to talk to you about working with your directors and what that process looks like. But just to touch on that idea of, in this industry, people build their teams around them, people they trust, people they know they can rely on. And where possible, those units of teams will move around together. And for anyone like on the outside kind of going, well, why are people bringing the same teams and not hiring new people? Personally, I think it just comes down to that idea of trust, of having a shorthand with people. Schedules are generally hard. Very rarely do you have a schedule where you go, we have tons of time here. So
yeah, that never happens.
never. So knowing that you're surrounded by people who understand the way you work allows you to work a little bit quicker. And I think that can be something that impacts that. But I would love to get your take on that part of the industry, and I guess, and why we do work in teams and bring our teams with us.
Yeah, I think, you know, I think you've kind of nailed it in everything that you said. Like, having that shorthand with people is so kind of paramount, really, because, you know, everyone has to hit the ground running. And so for me, knowing that the next job I go on to, I can take my team who know how I work, I know how they work, chances are I'll be thinking about something on set, and my third AD and my runners have already done it because they know that I'm going to be asking for this next. It's massive. And as you say, like, schedules are never going to get any easier. I remember if I was doing a block of something, say it had 4 episodes in it, chances are that one of the episodes may have a big stunt in it, or it may, may be quite a tricky episode, may have a load of background artists. Whereas now, every episode will have that stunt. Every episode will have that big number of background artists, so you kind of, that room to breathe that you used to have in a block of, as I say, 4 episodes of something has just gone. Like, because every, the ambition in scripts now is massive, with all the streaming services, that are out there, every single one wants to do something bigger and better, and so to be able to do those things with a team that, it just is half the battle, and I mean, you kind of get I imagine people who work in offices or whatever, they have that camaraderie, and so they would all work. If you could work with the people that and that you love all the time, you would just do it, whatever industry you're in. And for me, taking my team on is a really important thing because, again, I kind of step onto, into prep. And obviously, as a first, I tend to have more prep than the other members of my team, but also it's a safe space for me. I think things can be so hectic and so stressful on a set, especially maybe if I'm going into a job where I don't know the director or I don't know the DP or producer or whatever. Knowing that in a few weeks my team are going to come and be that safe space for me is really important. But one thing I will say is that, like, I am a big believer in giving people opportunities. So if a CV lands in my inbox, I might not be able to necessarily reply straight away, but there will be a time where I'll give that person a call, or I will, when I say I'm going to pass your CV on to my second, that always happens. And because I know how hard it is when you're first starting out to kind of, get that kind of lift up into it. So, although I do have a team that I work with, inevitably, if I'm only, for example, doing one block of something and then I hop off and do another job, well, my guys are still on the previous job and I can't pull them off it because, so, it is nice to kind of have a pool of people that I trust. And I am very fortunate that I do and have surrounded myself with those people, but it's everything you say. It's the trust, it's the shorthand, it's people who kind of know you and actually know maybe what's going on in your personal life. Like, kind of, you have those people who you go, do you know what? I'm just feeling a bit rubbish today. And, I think a lot of firsting for me, it is kind of a performance, as I said earlier, like, it is kind of a stage that you have to kind of stand there and you have to kind of, lead the pack, which I love. But, it does mean that sometimes you're exhausted by the end of it, like, and, like, and it's nice to kind of know that maybe, my second AD knows that my little boy was up all night and I'm absolutely knackered. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's nice to have another kind of safe space and another bit of familiarity for those moments where you haven't got that first AD mask on,
100%. So let's say you booked a job, regardless of who you're working with. How do you begin the process of prep and actually breaking down scripts then? Do you have kind of protocols like, okay, I'm going to read with this in mind first, I'm going to look at this next, or are you just absorbing everything and, beginning to compute and solve the puzzle as you go?
Well, for me, like, obviously I appreciate that probably a lot of firsts work different ways, but for me, I'll get given the scripts, and I will have a read of them, a very gentle read, I like to call it, just so that I can kind of have an idea of, what this particular episode's doing, where the story's gone, blah blah blah. So I'll do that, and then I'll kind of take each individual script and read them with everything else in mind, And if time allows, then I'll kind of do that and make some notes as I go through and be like, okay, this is a big scene, or there's stunts here, or there's a big makeup, like the big makeup on this person here, or whatever. So I'll kind of make those sort of things. And generally, as I do that, I'll be inputting it into Movie Magic, the scheduling system. And I mean, Movie Magic's brilliant. You kind of input every scene. You've got places where, you obviously put the cast in, you put your synopsis in, you can put if there's a big makeup, you can put if there's a stunt, if there's, anything like that, you can put it all in. If we're going to use a drone on that, we can put it all in. So then, once you've done that with every scene in your script, you've got then a list of all of your scenes. And so it's at that point then that you can, maybe group your locations together and then start creating the schedule, So once you kind of then pop that into a, some sort of schedule, I'll always kind of then meet with locations, art department, there might be a set build that, is going to take a little bit of extra time. So they'd rather not do that at the front of the schedule. They'd rather keep it down. We might be kind of going into a pub location and therefore you can't do that on a Thursday, Friday. It's their busiest days. You can't do that. So let's try and keep that to a Monday, or whatever. It becomes such a kind of joint effort with every other HOD that yes, I'm kind of officially being the one putting the schedule together. I work with an amazing location manager, Tom Bartram. I've worked with him on many, many things now. And we have, again, we have that shorthand. We have that lovely relationship for me to be able to go up to him and be like, dude, I'm really struggling to fit this in on this day. Is there any way that you can find, for example, maybe we're filming in a cafe and then maybe we need like a park bench, or there's a scene that maybe I go, maybe that could play on a park bench instead of this office or whatever, and I'll be like, if we move that, could you find a park bench next to this cafe for me? So again, because I know Tom and because he knows me and we both absolutely value each other, I hold him in the highest regard in terms of, as location managers go, he is just up there with one of the best ones I've ever worked with. And so I know if he can help me, he will, and vice versa, So then by that process, we'll put it all together and create a schedule, And I mean, the difficulty nowadays is that scripts tend to be quite late when you get them. I very fortunate on my lap. I did a block of Brassic for Sky, and I was blown away. I sat there on day one of prep, and all 4 scripts were there. I was like, this never happens, Like I could be getting into the last kind of week of prep and still not had like a full script of something, or or I know there's a men's going to come. So to get like these 4 scripts, and to be fair, they didn't really change that much, like in the kind of 6-7 weeks of prep that I had, and that's brilliant because then you can pop that schedule out, and the minute that I've done that schedule, everyone else can start doing their job as well. Hair and makeup, costume, they can kind of break down when their changes come in, and art department will be like, oh well, we need to book these cars for this scene, and so yeah, like everyone else can start doing it. So it can feel quite pressured in the beginning because everyone's like, have you got a schedule? Have you got a schedule? Have you done the schedule? How's the schedule coming along? And I'm like, yeah, just leave me alone. Just leave me alone for a week, a couple of weeks, and I'll get one to you. But yeah, it's such a joint effort. And that's the fun of it. It's a massive puzzle. And, the amount of times I've looked at a schedule and I've gone, this is a thing of beauty. Like nothing will ruin this. And then suddenly an actor will get a job on another date and we haven't booked them in, so we have to let them go. And then, people drop the bomb on the schedule, and you've just got to restart again. So, however, it's fine. It can be frustrating, but that's the part I love, really. That puzzling part,
I'm going to hazard a guess then that Brassic shoot probably went quite well.
It did. Like Brassic is just such a wonderful show to work on. It's it's just such a great show. The scripts are crazy. They are, they're just absolutely mental. There's a lot of fun on set. There's a lot of kind of young characters, and we just had a ball the whole time. It was just such a good vibe. And I've done a lot of quite dark, dark dramas, kind of, and it is a different kind of vibe, because, I remember working on Without Sin with Vicky McClure, and she was like, I remember we were just so silly in between scenes, because she was like, I have to be really miserable throughout all of this. I've just had found my daughter murdered within this, whatever. And so, and she's like, I just want to do a comedy. Like, let's just do a comedy. Do you know what I mean? And so, yeah, and I mean, God, you love those I love a gritty drama. That's kind of my bag. And the things I like to watch are like gritty dramas that have you hooked. And, but then going on to something like Brassic, it's just absolutely insane, yeah, brilliant. So much fun. And like the characters, we were really lucky. We had Imelda Staunton in, Greg Davis. We had, some great names for a Christmas ep that we did. And, and you just kind of sit there and you pinch yourself, and you've like got people walking around in giant baubles and just kind of, it's just mad. It's just, and I'm very, very blessed to the fact that, every day is different, but yeah, it was good fun. It was a very tough schedule. There was lots to do in Brassic, and, inevitably not a lot of time to do it. But we did it. And again, like, they've got a wonderful crew that work there. They, that kind of do a lot of, they've been there for quite a few seasons. Everyone kind of knows how it works. And you just have a really good time.
I'd say it was good crack.
Yeah. Yeah.
In looking at scheduling, one of the things that stands out to me is this idea of just being in constant communication with everyone and being totally transparent and upfront with everyone. What I was going to ask you about then was, when your directors are becoming involved in scheduling with you and building that schedule, you mentioned obviously being able to put into movie magic, oh, we're using a drone for this. So I was wondering what you as an AD ideally want, knowing that every director is different, but ideally would like from your directors in terms of helping you shape the schedule. I know I like to really interrogate schedules because you have to be able to stand over them. And I think, it's a very collaborative process in terms of solving that puzzle. But what's your take on that side of things? Do you want shot lists? Would you like storyboards for bigger sequences? Do you want to know all the gear you're going to be using for all those setups well ahead of time? Is there a little bit of space to go, on the day, maybe we'll use Techno Crane here?
Yeah, it's a real fine line, because, you can have all of the shot lists in the world. You can have a list of all of the equipment in the world that you want to use and the director wants to use. But you just don't know what the variables are on the day. We might be in a situation where an actor was picked up late, there was traffic, and, there might be, family emergency for somebody. So, which automatically then puts you maybe an hour or two down. So with all the will in the world, like, you could have all of the toys out on, for a particular scene, but you could get there on the day and be like, we need to quick think, because we haven't got the time for this. You might be in a world where that scene could drop onto another day. It could, be picked up elsewhere, and that's great, and that's absolutely fine. But obviously, by the time you get to shooting, things like drone, for example, it's been paid for. So you kind of go, well, there isn't the budget to restage that elsewhere, so we're going to have to do it now. So we're going to have to, I think, what I love about, and this is the great thing about working with Phil, and he's got such a collaborative relationship with his DP, Matt Lewis, again, the best in the business. They work, they're so symbiotic. They are literally finishing each other's sentences. And at first it was quite daunting. I was like, oh my God, these two are crazy. But then suddenly you realize you end up finishing their sentences as well. And, for me, from a director, and obviously it doesn't always work, but especially if I've come on board and I we don't know each other, is I trust Phil and Matt to know the time to keep an eye on their watch. Yes, it's absolutely my job to keep banging that drum and completing the schedule that we have in front of us each day. But, everyone has to be a part of making that happen, and I've had teams before be, very kind of argumentative at the first because the day hasn't been finished. But actually everybody needs to look at each other and themselves and be like, well, okay, we've gone over 10 minutes here. Oh, but we couldn't find, a member of a team that we needed a piece of equipment, and that held us back by 10 minutes. So let's not kind of finger point at people, and the good thing about, shot lists are amazing, and as you say, like for the bigger sequence, it's great. And generally, if you've got a bigger, a big sequence, then there will have been a meeting to kind of discuss the coverage prior to getting there on the day. So I will then know, right, okay, maybe we're running someone over in a car or whatever. And I'll know, right, okay, chances are we're going to need a full afternoon for this. So what I'll tend to do is maybe make a very light morning, a few two-handers or whatever that I know we can do quickly so that we can bank some time for this big piece in the afternoon. Because, it's in the best interest of the director to provide as much information to me as possible, because essentially they have to shoot it, and I'm never going to load up a day, that is unachievable. But naturally, as I say, as scripts get more ambitious and time gets less, there are days on schedules that scare us, and having a director who is really well prepped is absolutely key, and the directors who go, do you know what? I have a wish list of shots, but I know that worst case scenario, if we've run out of time for whatever reason, it is always going to be a case of robbing Peter to pay Paul, because there isn't the money to kind of add an extra week on the shoot. Of course, everyone would love extra time to shoot stuff, but I have to know that my director is prepped, and there has to be this unwritten level of trust that we both have for each other to get it shot. So, planning and prep is key, really, but also just having that kind of flexibility to go, do you know what? I've got a kind of a trump card in my pocket that we can play. And Phil's brilliant for that, because Phil's very much, he's like the king of the one shot, isn't he? And, and the good thing with Phil is that I could be looking at a scene and be going, we've got a 3-page scene here with a number of casts. And I know that he and Matt will have blocked it in a way that they can do it in one shot. And so, and then with that, I sometimes have directors who have those trump cards, but don't tell me that they have the trump cards. So I spend 3/4 of the day flapping. I don't flap, but internally flapping and being like, oh, I think we might be in a bit of trouble here. And, and them keeping their cards very close to their chest. And I'm like, and then at the end, when I'm kind of like, we are kind of a little bit behind here. And at that point they go, oh no, we're fine because I'm going to do this. And at that point, I take them aside and I say, you could have told me that and I could have enjoyed my lunch. So it's all about communication. We're in the communication business, aren't we? And keeping people, I'm very transparent with the information I give. I know some firsts who like to keep their schedule, and a time schedule to their chest, and, because they don't want people to kind of assume, well, we need to be here by lunch or we need to be there by whenever. But I'm very transparent, and anyone who has a question on set for me of, where do you think we're going to be? I'll always tell them, because, forewarned is forearmed for every department. And, it might be a case that makeup could get ahead and, be putting bruises on someone, for a scene later down the line. So everyone having the information for me is key. I have nothing to hide with that sort of stuff,
I love that. I'm a big fan personally of time schedules, with the caveat that everyone also knows, yes, there's flexibility in this thing, and it's not the end of the world if we're a bit behind at a certain point, and let's not get too ahead of ourselves if we're a bit ahead at a certain point.
Absolutely. You can see people booking in dinner reservations for 5 o'clock when you're running ahead. You're like, hold up. And again, you could get to a day where, you've got, 6 strips of 2-handers, and everyone's like, oh, we'll be done by lunch here, you know. So there's a lot of caveats that kind of go with each time schedule that I give out. But, you know, again, it's all experience. And, you know, I'm sure there was some time schedules I did when I first started out that were way off. But I do like to think now, like, you know, my time schedules tend to kind of be about right. Like, it's very rare that, like, you know, we might kind of be half an hour adrift or whatever. But I'm never really worried that we're never going to make a day, which is good. And again, I can only put that down to my own experience and being on set and working with lots of different people. And, you know, so yeah, it's good. I do pat myself on the back for my time schedules, I'll be honest. Like, you know, saying that, I'll probably do one now and it will just all go to the shit. But
I was going to ask you then about, you know, prep's done, everyone's happy, everyone has signed off on everything, you get set, things can go wrong. You touched on some of this stuff, but I have one other question for you in relation to it, which is when things are kind of behind or things aren't going to plan in a big way, first ADs can, I think, oftentimes maybe have to be the bad guy on set in a sense and going, we need to move on. How do you handle those moments of, you know, maybe a director is being super ambitious on a particular scene, but there's no time, and if you don't move on from this 2-hander that we're being really ambitious about, we won't get to the big stunt at the end of the day.
yeah, the 8-hander, that's, yeah.
How do you handle
it? Again, like, it is quite a difficult one, and you know, and it is about judging your audience and kind of how you deal with people. I always have kind of a plan B in my back pocket, and often, you know, even with directors like Phil who know me inside out, I'll always have something in my back pocket that, you know, I'll know ahead of the game where maybe that scene could drop to. Obviously, if it was a case of like spending too long on a 2-hander and missing out on a massive stunt, then I would be like, dude, let's just drop these 2-handers. We're taking too long on these and we'll just go to the stunt because everything's booked for it. That's what we're going to do. However, you know, the way I'm really laid back. I'm really laid back on set, even if kind of it's like the duck kind of swimming along and it looks really graceful. Underneath, it's like, oh my God, you know. But I do try very much to make sure that we're all having a really nice time on set. And, you know, because I think that's where you get the best out of people. And, you know, I'm not a shouter. I don't shout at people. I have generally quite a loud voice anyway. So what I find is that I have this kind of calmness and I have this kind of fun side. Like most, you know, I'd like to think that people enjoy being on my set. So it does mean that if it does get to a point where, we are quite down, and I find that I then just raise my voice a notch, and it's like everyone's like, right, quick, right, she's raised her voice, we've got to get going now, gang. Do you know what I mean? And I think, and again, that's something I've really worked as in molding my way of firsting, you know, and I feel like the teams I work with just are very, very good at kind of just picking out when I really need them to kind of crack the whip. And we tend to be good. We tend to get things done. And obviously, you know, I would hate to ever think about dropping big stuff. And touch wood, it has never happened to me where something massive has had to go. But when it comes to, as I say, when it comes to kind of other scenes and stuff, I'll always have a copy of the rest of the schedule on my iPad. I'll always have the day out of days for the artists that, so I know when they're in, or I know at least when they're booked. So I'll always know when we're going to certain locations. So I'll always kind of have something in the back of my head that can go, do you know what? If we drop that scene, it's okay. And we can, you know, as long as myself as a first can maybe ring up a line producer or a producer and say, we're in the weeds here. However, I've got a solution. As long as I take a solution to them where it can go, then generally they're okay with it. And also because, you know, again, I like to work with producers and line producers who trust me, and they will know it would be very rare for me to have dropped something or for us to have dropped something. So they'll know that there will be a good reason behind it, you know. And I'm very fortunate, again, like the directors I work with, I do feel like I have a good enough relationship to them to kind of go, what are we thinking here? Like, we might be in a little bit of, we're in a bit of trouble here. Like, how do we work this out? And again, I'm very, very fortunate that, between us, we tend to kind of come up with a good solution,
I love the idea. Well, you've said it a couple of times, just use that word solutions. And I think some people are problems focused and some people are solutions focused. And in this game, you need to be solutions focused. There's nothing worse than someone who just keeps pointing out a problem without offering anything other than, hey, look at the big problem.
Yeah. And that's it. And like, it doesn't make anybody feel good when you're like, you're going to run out of time and you're not going to be able to do this. Like, so the way I would approach it would always be like, and again, like I feel now that I technically can see how the edit's going to work. And again, that for me, when I first started firsting, I used to think, oh, I'm not a very technical first. I don't really understand like, so much like the shots and stuff. And as I've gone on, and worked with various different people and just kind of learnt it myself, like I kind of go, right, okay, there is a chance that they might not need that shot. I know that they want it, but do they need it? No, they don't need it. Does the edit work? Yes, it does. And I know creatively, it's not my job to quash any creative spirit and creative desire that the director DP might want, but it is my job to kind of be realistic. And so, I have confidence in myself to kind of go over to that director and be like, listen, I know you really, really want that, but if you get that, we're not going to be able to get X, Y, Z from the next scene. And I know you really want that. You know what I mean? So, and again, all of that comes with experience, and it is, and I'll never go to a director and be like, you've mucked this up, this is on you. Because again, it's also collaborative and it's all important that, we all want to get the best, the best version of the show on screen. Like, of course we do, so turning out, I think it is very easy for a panicked first to just lash out and be like, but for me, it's just not proactive. And it doesn't make anybody feel good about their job. And actually, the minute you get people who are then, heads held low, it's very hard to get it back up. And I say that from I used to play a lot of competitive sport, like hockey, football, rugby. The minute that you've let a few goals in and everyone's shouting at you, well, you're down on your ass. You're not going to kind of get back up and want to perform again. So it's all about managing people and doing it the right way. And, I'm fortunate. I've worked with a lot of first, as I say, again, kind of reiterating on that point that, you pull the parts of people that you want to take forward as a first, and you pull the parts of the people that you go, do you know what, that doesn't work for me. So we'll let that go. And that kind of age of like Jurassic kind of crew members is dying out, and you do still see a few around, and that's inevitable. But it's so refreshing to know that times are changing and everyone wants to kind of do a good job, and that kind of like that grumpy kind of like version of people and the archaic kind of views and the way of doing things is kind of dying out. Long may that happen, really, because you just don't need that negativity and kind of, it's just all counteractive, isn't it?
Totally. And I often ask kind of questions about this set itself and that environment, and trying to dig into what makes people tick and how does a director or a producer or anyone ensure that the environment is space where people can do their absolute best work and be the best version of themselves, because at the end of the day, you're going to get more out of that person. And let's say as a director or as a producer or showrunner, whatever the case may be, the show is going to be better. The film will be better for it. And you will look better as a result of making sure everyone was willing to give you the best of themselves.
Absolutely. Like, people work better when they're treated nicely. Like, and that's not just this in this industry, that's in every industry going forward. Like, you have to treat people with kindness. I'm a big advocate for supporting people's mental health. And, I've worked, we have a lot of like Soulless Mind on set, which, is a great company that, helps people out on set if they're struggling with their mental health or for whatever reason. And, I just think it's so apparent these days that everybody has a lot on in their lives. And whether it be, worries about financial worries or, something's not going on in your relationship or whatever, like everybody who is on that set has a life outside of that set. And for me, like, bearing that in mind is a really important thing, and again, that's another reason why sticking to or taking your teams on with you is, I like to think that if any of my team came on, I'd be able to recognize if they weren't themselves. And, and I think it is just so important to kind of nourish the people that you have in any department, because everyone's going to work better when they are feeling like they're being treated correctly, and as there's more, as things kind of have moved in terms of like the rates have gone up, in certain, not saying they go up crazy, but like, as people, through Bector and whatnot, they have to kind of stick to the certain rate cards and whatnot. And people therefore feel like they are being paid the right amount, like, and obviously there is no kind of prep wrap time now. So everybody gets paid for the hours that they are there for. Nobody feels like they're working for free. There isn't a grace period that you have to go. People don't have that grace period now. You just get overtime. Like, as those things kind of are, being ironed out, and again, long may that continue, like, people have less things to kind of like, be grumpy about. Do you know what I mean? Because everyone does feel like they're getting the right rate or whatever. And so, so then when you get to set, people are happier in that respect, and because people feel like they're being treated the right way. So for me, as a first and someone who is obviously quite, pivotal in ensuring people have a good time, I think, again, the people at the top, the producer, the director, the line producer, the showrunners, execs, they do have to kind of look after their teams because it's really important. And, and that's why, again, like, I don't want anyone to be on a set of mine and be like, oh, we don't get given the time or we get shouted at. I never shout at people ever. It's just not a thing for me. I won't ever ask people to kind of like, hurry up with that, which it just wouldn't happen. Like, it's like, I'm not asking anyone to do anything like that because I don't want people to feel like someone's on their back, because they may be going home and having an awful time at home. You don't know. They might have people who are unwell within their family. They might have something else that going on themselves. And I think it's really, really important to just look after the crews and the cast in the best way that we can.
Amen to that.
Yeah, big time, big time. And I don't know whether it's also because, being a female coming up in what is predominantly a very male industry, really, like, it's, again, that is something that's really changing. And it's so wonderful to see so many girls coming up through, especially through the technical departments, like, amazing. The amount of like female camera operator, like, one of my best friends, Zoe, is a female camera operator, and she is smashing it. She's just done so well with her career. And, and she is a massive, she's so good for, other females coming up through what is a really, really male dominated kind of department. And I know she had troubles with being a woman in that part of the industry. And, and seeing more women coming up through there is amazing. And I think for me as a female first, like, I want to be that first, that my team, whether they're, male, female, whatever, I want them to look up to me and see that I give the same amount of respect, regardless of anything, regardless of absolutely anything. And I know one of my runners who is fab, Becky, she was very much like, it's so refreshing to see a female first like you on set. And I'm sure she's worked with other great female firsts, you know, whatever. But she's just like, you know, she absolutely makes it very apparent that she wants to be a first like me as she goes through the thing, you know, goes up the ladder herself. And that is all I could ask for. You know, the idea that I can kind of, you know, I know that my male runners will give the same respect. You know, they give the same respect to me as they would a male first. Like they all take the things that I say on board. And I do hope that it will encourage them to be better first as they kind of go up through the ranks, you know.
I'm sure it will.
I hope so, yeah.
What is the hardest thing, in your opinion, about being a first AD?
The hardest thing is, and I'm very lucky that I don't really have this on the sets that I kind of frequent now, let's say. But that whole idea that it's down to the first to push everyone through the finish line, and I get that, I do get that. But when you do kind of come across crews that, you know, put it all on your shoulders, it can be a very lonely space. Firsting can be really lonely. And again, you know, that was at the point where, you know, I used to do a lot of, you know, like blocks of certain things. So I wouldn't necessarily go in and it be my entire baby because I'd be handing the baton over to someone else, you know. Whereas now, you know, very fortunate. Like, you know, I do count my lucky stars every time I think about what career I've landed in and the people I surround myself with. But, you know, and like, so I tend now to come onto a job and then that is my baby. Or either I'll kick it off and do the first block or I'll do the whole show. And so that kind of definitely takes out that kind of loneliness element of it. But there are times when you are just nipping in for a block of something and maybe you don't know all the crew very well and everyone's looking at you for what we're doing next. And you're 3 hours down and you're there and you're like, wow, like this does feel really lonely, you know. And, you know, there can be, again, not so much anymore, but there can be, you know, the odd passive aggressive comment that comes out, and people who have been really jolly with you in the morning are suddenly really passive aggressive with you in the afternoon as the time's ticking. You know, all of these people may have seen the struggles that I, as a first, have had with maybe a director, or maybe we're filming outside and there's just plane after plane after plane. So you're waiting for, you know, you've lost 45 minutes of the day just waiting for planes, you know. So, and it's kind of what I struggled with in the beginning when I first started was the fact that it felt like people didn't see that. People didn't see the kind of battles that you were facing. And, you know, suddenly it's your fault that there's planes going on and you know, and therefore you're down. And that can be quite a lonely place to be. But the positives, thousandfold, take over the negatives of being a first. And especially now that I feel more established and I've, you know, feel like you know, part of the first in furniture, really, you know.
You said something a little while ago, which I'd like to just hark back to, which was not blaming people and looking at yourself first, maybe. And I think it's such an important value, personally anyway. I know it may not everyone may agree with it, but I think as a director, if you don't complete your day, that's on you. And I'm aware that there may be a multitude of things that went on during that day, but I think it's really important, and not just for a director, for everyone on that set, to own that what went on and don't pass the buck to anyone, you know?
Yeah, as I say, I'm a big believer of kind of, you know, and there used to be a time where I would finish work and if it had been a bad day, I would sit on that for the rest of the evening, you know, and that could be really hard to do because I'd be like, why didn't we finish that? You know, why did that not happen? And I used to take a lot of that responsibility on, again, probably because, you know, there were shows where there were people who would point the finger and be like, oh, you know, whatever. And now you know, I kind of get home and I have to kind of allow myself to realize there's accountability that needs to be taken everywhere. You know, I would never point the finger at anybody. But I also know that I surround myself, and I'm really lucky to work with, for example, you know, if, you know, if a gaffer's light had broken, or you know, or something had happened throughout, I'd be like, well, that was no one's fault. Like, you know, the lighting department were running their asses off to try and kind of replace the light that had broken, which was inevitably slowing us down. You know, but also I know that at the end of the day, if I went to that gaffer, they would be like, oh God, I'm so sorry that light really screwed us over today. You know, so I think, again, now that that kind of Jurassic era of crew members are kind of filtering out, I do think that the generation that we live in will hold their hands up, you know, and accept accountability. And it's important to do so, and it's important to show the kind of the trainees that are coming in that it's okay to take that responsibility. It's okay to take that accountability, you know. And I know that if I was faced with two runners, you know, one of them absolutely held their hands up and said, you know what, I totally misread the time on the call sheet and I didn't get them into hair and makeup, I would eat that up. I'd be like, thank you for doing that, you know, because also responsibility doesn't just fall down onto one person. So say a runner doesn't get someone into the chair on time. Well, also that makeup artist could have said, oh, this person's not in my chair right now. Is this, you know, so just acknowledging your part in it, I think, is really important. But equally, I do think there are so many variables that happen that nobody can control, you know, whether that be the traffic, whether that be a car breaking down, whether that be, you know, a power cut at base, which means that costume and makeup are in the dark and therefore they can't get the artist ready, you know. But as much as that might be something that's frustrating, it's nobody's fault. And I think at the end of the day, we have to still get the day shot. So, and then it does fall on like the director, the DP, the first, you know, to kind of come up with a solution. But it is always about firefighting. It's always about spinning those plates and being like, right, okay, how are we going to make this work? Yeah, it's not ideal, but actually, if you sit and dwell on that, you're just going to waste more time. So let's crack on and let's just take a moment and come up with a solution.
I think it's a really important point you hit on there as well, is like, what are the controllables? What can you control and what can't you?
If you go home at the end of the day and you go, I did everything that was in my control, and actually everything that happened because of the things that were in my control, everything was fine. However, there are other things I can't control, and you've got to not beat yourself up for it, because you just lose hours of sleep. And I've done that before. And you know, I'm very much a person who, I'm an overthinker, and I, you know, I will think about something that I've said to someone, if, you know, or they've said to me, and I know that person may not ever think about it again. But, you know, if I see them in a supermarket 5 years down the line, I'm going to remember that thing that I said to them, you know. And I just think it is, yeah, it's just important to kind of, you know, remember that we're all only human. We're all there because we want to create something magical. And it's about just accepting that, you know, sometimes things happen and it's out of your control.
On that note of being only human and touching on accountability, the idea of the leaders on sets making sure that trainees or runners and new people entering the industry have an opportunity to see when someone does make a mistake, that they just put their hand up and they own it. And the quickest way to fix that mistake or find a solution is to share that with everyone, so everyone knows what has happened. And
absolutely. Like the amount of times I used to get, you know, before I kind of came to realizing that that's the way we do things, you know, because now whenever I start a job, I will take my team and I will be like, right, this is kind of what I expect from you. And it's very lax because I'm very laid back. But, you know, one of the main ones is always going to be, just tell me the truth. Like if you've made an error, that's absolutely cool. It won't go any further than our department, but just tell me. Like, you know, and for example, like if I get a call on a radio saying artists are traveling, but the artists are still in their thing and then nowhere near traveling, I'll say to them, like, if they're not traveling, I'll know it's not your fault. Like, you know, and we actually tend to have like maybe a little code word for me to know that the artists are aware, but the artists aren't moving. Do you know what I mean? And I always want that to be a safe space for my team, to know that, you know, they don't have to come up with an excuse as to why they're not traveling because because they think it's their fault. 9 times out of 10, it's not their fault at all, you know, and there's a delay because there's a delay. But just tell me the truth. If they're not traveling, well, I could maybe go and get an establisher that we need that's scheduled for later down in the day. So I said, I just need to know the facts of where you're at and, you know, what sort of time frame we're looking at, because I can replan the day and we can do something else instead. If there's going to be a 20-minute delay, then let's hoik the cameras outside, get an establisher, and then we've knocked that off the schedule, you know. So it all works in everyone's benefit to do it that way. And I do think that, you know, there used to be quite a bit of a blame culture within our industry. I think, you know, because everyone wants to do the greatest job and everyone wants to, you know, it's such a competitive industry. I think fingers kind of can get pointed for various reasons, but it's again, like, it's just counteractive. Like, you know, it's not great. And I think that is going now. And, you know, and again, I'm a big advocate for kind of people just telling me as it is, and we'll work through it together. And, you know, and another thing I say to them is, like, I don't want to hear any bitching about any other department while I'm on set. If I hear you bitching about it to other people, that will get my goat up. Like, because actually, come to me. If you've got a problem, I will deal with it. I will nip it in the bud, and we will move along, you know. But again, it's just about communication and doing the right thing by people and treating people the right way.
Yeah. So what is your favorite part of being an AD?
Oh, it's gotta be the buzz. It's the buzz and, like, the people you meet, like the places that you know, you suddenly find yourself stood in this magnificent location, surrounded by like-minded, creative people who all want to create that magic that we then see on the screen. You know, it's a buzz. It's a real thrill. And I'm going into the next job that I'm doing with Phil called Adolescence. It's a Netflix show. It's a 4-part crime drama, and each episode is one shot. So on the, you know, with the same kind of notion of the Boiling Point film, yeah, Phil, we're doing that. And I can only imagine the thrill when we call cut at the end of, you know, each take. You know, I'm buzzing for it. You know, don't get me wrong, I'm absolutely shitting my pants about it, because I've never shot anything like that before. You know, within the Boiling Point TV series, we had, you know, a few long shots. You know, I think the opener to episode 1, I think, ended up being about 13 minutes. And even that, you're holding your breath throughout it. And it's magnificent when you get it and you're like, oh gosh, you know, like, I've spoken to the boys a lot about how Boiling Point felt when they'd got it and they'd nailed it. I think they did it maybe 7 times. I think it was the 4th one that they used. And, you know, they were all like, oh, we're just all in tears because it's just like, we've done it. Like, you know, and so going on to a show which kind of has that concept, I think will probably be like a real career highlight for me. Like, I've had very, very many, like, wonderful experiences with people on set and the things you've shot. And there's nothing quite like getting a script in front of you, turning the page and going, this is going to be something massive. I remember even as a third AD reading Line of Duty, thinking, this is going to be great. Like, you know, and so that kind of buzz is unreal. And, you know, I was very fortunate to do, after the strikes, there was some post-strike pickups for Gentlemen in Moscow, just at the end of last year and the start of this year. And, you know, I found myself kind of stood on set opposite Ewan McGregor, and I was like, you know, my, you know, 16, 17-year-old self who was obsessed with Moulin Rouge is standing opposite Ewan McGregor. Like, where in the world, like, have I managed to land this? Like, you know, and so you do get those pinch me moments, and it's nice because the further you go down in your career, the less of them you get, because it's kind of your day-to-day, your, like, normal life, you know. But then other times something like that will happen and you'll be like, oh my God, this is what I do for a living. I remember going to lovely Mark Williams' wedding, who was Mr. Weasley in Harry Potter, obviously, you know, famous for the Fast Show. And I remember kind of sat in his wedding, watching him do his vows and thinking, my kind of like 14-year-old self reading Harry Potter would have, her head would have blown off if you'd have said, well, in 15 years' time, you're going to be at his wedding. You know, it's just madness. Like, and we're, you know, to be surrounded by that sort of stuff is great. But essentially, like, the creativity and the magic that you manage to create with other people of the same mindset is really, really special, you know?
Yeah, I think those moments are really important, regardless of what way they come to you as well, though, because I think when you're in this industry, you're constantly working so hard, and there has to be, because we're all freelance, a bit of some semblance of a hustle culture, and it can be really easy sometimes to forget to actually stop and look at how far you've traveled and what is behind you and where you are now. So I love that you had those two moments.
Yeah, I mean, and they're two moments in a massive book of moments that I, you know, that I do have, and it's really, really magic, like, you know, and also I went to I went to kind of like a screening of the Boiling Point series, and you know, you look around, kind of, it's in the cinema, and you know, Phil's there doing a Q&A, and you know, he mentions, you know, that he works with me, and he loves working with this first AD, and I'm like, oh my god, that's me, like, oh wow, he's talking to me, like, you know, and stuff, and you know, and you look around, and there are hundreds of people there who are desperate to get inside the mind of Phil and how he works, and you know, I don't take it for granted that that's kind of my day when I work with Phil, you know. And I say to Phil all the time, like, you know, everybody adores working with him because he is brilliant, but you know, there'll be times on set where, you know, he'll be holding a banana like a mobile phone, and he'll say, take a photo of me looking like I'm holding the banana like a mobile phone. I'm like, if only people could see you. If only all of those hundreds of thousands of people who, you know, are like, Phil Barantini, the big guy in film, I'm currently taking a photo of you, you know, eating a ham sandwich. Do you know what I mean? Like, and those are the moments as well. And the kind of the fact that you can be up at 6 o'clock in the morning laughing about the most ridiculous things, you know, kind of, I remember as a second kind of going in and being bent double laughing with, you know, costume and makeup, because it's so early in the morning and everyone's delirious, but it's real kind of like that pack mentality, you know, you're all there for the goodness of it because you love it. And, you know, and I speak to a lot of friends of mine who are, you know, brilliant people within their field, within their industry, whatever that may be. And, you know, there's a few of them that absolutely love their jobs, but there's a few that are like, there's no passion about it. They do it because they need to have a job and they have to provide, and actually they clock in, they clock off, and that's the end of their working day. And a lot of them are like, I just wish that I had that fire that you have about your industry. And that, I think, is really special. I think, you know, I think the industry that we are in is magic. Like, you know, for want of a better word, like it's incredible, really, the things that we do and the people we meet and the places we go, and you know, yeah, it's insane.
It is absolutely magic. For anyone considering becoming an AD or entering the AD department, what advice would you give to them, or what do you think is a particular quality that you need to be an AD?
Personally, I would say always be yourself, like always be honest, and treat people with the kindness that you would expect to be treated with. You know, I think a lot of people go and do all of these film degrees and kind of come out thinking that they are owed a job. I think people need to remember to kind of earn their stripes. Like, listen is a really big one. Like, listen to the things that people above you are telling you, because they've been there, they've done it, they've bought the t-shirt, and they know. I would also say, don't allow yourself to be treated badly. I think there is this kind of thought that people come in as trainees, as runners, and, you know, oh, well, they'll do it, they're a runner, or they don't mind, they're a runner. but know your worth. Know your worth. I think you all need to kind of remember that, yeah, you are as much of an important cog as any other person on that set. And it is about treating people. For me, someone could have the best CV in front of me and someone may not have the most experience. However, they've got like a blinding personality and like a real passion, and they're keen and they ask all the right questions. I will always go for the person with the least experience, with the lesser CV, for want of a better phrase, like, because if I know that I can click with someone as an AD, then I will absolutely take that, because I know that I'm not going to get the back chat. I'm not going to get the kind of, I don't know, I just think getting a good vibe from someone is so important. And I think, when they have those kind of Zooms with people, let your personality shine. Tell me a story about yourself. Like, don't try and tick all of the boxes with the buzzwords, because this industry isn't about that. Yeah, those are the sort of kind of tips I would probably give.
And maybe they would be the same advice you would give to your younger self. But I asked this question, so I'm going to ask it anyway, which is, looking at your career now and where you are, if you could go back and talk to young Sarah before she embarked on becoming an AD, knowing what you know, is there a piece of advice you would whisper in her ear?
I think it would be know your worth. I think it would be, stand up for yourself, which I do, but I haven't always managed to do that. Like, I've kind of, as I say, like, I always used to just be like, yeah, I'll take the job. Yeah, I'll do it. Yeah, you want me to do that? Yeah, and I think, although that is a great kind of attitude to have, and I would kind of tell people to have that attitude, don't let yourself be, taken for granted. Because sadly, there are still people out there who, are a bit like, I was treated this way, so I'm going to treat people that way. Whereas, I like to kind of promote the idea of, well, I was treated this way, so I'm definitely not going to do that to people. Do you know what I mean? So what I probably would whisper to little Sarah is, believe that confidence that you have. You have got an inner confidence, and believe it. And actually, just by being yourself and actually treating people with respect from day one is going to be enough to get you places. I think it's really important. I think there are so many things within the industry that can knock your confidence. And I think you always just have to kind of remember that you do know your shit and own it. And one bad day in a week of filming does not mean the rest of that week has to be bad. Own the things that you do, ask the questions, and don't feel like a question. I always say this to my team, like, it might feel like a really stupid question, but just come and ask it me, because it probably isn't a stupid question. And it might be a question that I've forgotten to ask myself as well. So, kind of, yeah, I think those are the things I'd say.
Amazing. Normally, I would kind of finish by asking what's next, but I know that you're going on to Adolescence with Phil for the next few months, so, which sounds very exciting, and I'm very much looking forward to watching 4 one-shot episodes of telly.
Yeah, I mean, I said to Phil the other day, I said, so basically what happens is, right, I just call action and then I'll just sit and watch telly with you for an hour. Is that about right? So, yeah, I think obviously it'll be a lot more than that. I think it'll be like doing live theatre, really, which will be great. But yeah, I do know that I think the AD team will probably be costumed up and, in order to kind of cue and be in there and stuff. So it'll definitely be a challenge. I'm really looking forward to it, because it will absolutely kind of push me out of my comfort zone, which I feel is the perfect time in my career for that. Like, I love Thurston, I love the scheduling that goes with it. But yeah, I was like, oh, okay, when I start, there's not really a schedule to do because it's all going in one. So, I'm really excited at the way that goes. And yeah, that'll take me through till September. I think I'll probably end up having a couple of months off and then see what's out there. Yeah.
It sounds brilliant. And like you said, I think one of the pure joys of doing something like that next is the idea that every day is different and we get to continuously learn and build our experience and knowledge and tools. And so what I will say is thank you very much for...
Thank you. It's been ace. It's been lovely having a chat with you.
It's been brilliant. And I appreciate you so much sharing your
experiences to date, all about your career, and talking to us all about AD.
And that's a wrap on Sarah Lucas. Thank you for listening to the Filmmaker's Playbook. I love that Sarah repeatedly used the word magic when talking about making films and television, because it is magic. Another one of my favourite takeaways from today's conversation is forewarned is forearmed, and the importance of transparency and communication. What were your favourite takeaways? If you're enjoying the show, please share it with a friend or follow and rate us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Please follow the podcast on Instagram at the Filmmaker's Playbook Podcast. You can also follow me on Instagram at Jason Branagan Director, and you can find Sarah on Instagram at Sarah Lucas the First. Links and social media handles are in the show notes. Join me next week when I talk to producer John Wallace. Until next time.